The Night Watchman and the Things That Silence Knows. There was a small town hidden between gentle hills and quiet forests, a town where the nights were longer than the days, and where silence seemed to breathe between the old wooden houses. Every evening, when the last shop closed and the final window dimmed, the streets would fall into a hush as if the whole town were exhaling at once. And that was when he began his work. The Night Watchman. He was a man of few words, with steps that were soft, and eyes that had learned to see in darkness without fear. For many years, he walked the same streets, checked the same corners, and listened to the same night wind. People in town barely remembered when he started working. To them, he had simply always been there, like the lantern by the bridge, or the clock that chimed at midnight. But the watchman kept a quiet secret. During those lonely hours, when the moon hung low and the world slowed to a gentle heartbeat, he heard things. Not voices in the usual sense. Not sounds made by people. No, he heard the stories whispered by the things around him. Stories that were never rushed, never loud. Stories told in the slow language of stillness. He didn't know when it began. Perhaps it had always been like this, and he had only just learned to listen. Or maybe silence decided to trust him one night when he walked beneath the dim lantern light with a tired heart. One cold evening, as he made his rounds past the old bakery, he paused. The windows were fogged from the warmth inside, though no one had baked anything there for months. A soft, almost tender warmth drifted into the street. And then, he heard it. A quiet memory. It wasn't a voice exactly, but a feeling, like a story unfolding gently in the air. He sensed a woman humming at dawn, kneading dough with sleepy hands, dusting flour across the wooden table like falling snow. He felt the laughter of children who once pressed their noses against the glass, waiting for warm bread. He felt the simple happiness that lived there long ago. The bakery was telling its story. Slow. Peaceful. Unhurried. The watchman closed his eyes, breathed in the soft scent of imagined bread, and continued walking. That night was the first night he understood. Silence is full of things that only reveal themselves when no one rushes them. As nights passed, more stories revealed themselves. The old lamppost by the river whispered of lovers who carved initials into its base, promising forever under a trembling moon. The bench beneath the oak tree carried the weight of someone who once sat there every evening, reading letters with shaking hands. The stone bridge remembered footsteps, some heavy, some light, some hesitant, as if each passerby left a faint echo woven into the stones. The watchman listened. Not because he had to, but because listening made the night feel alive. One evening, fog drifted through town like a soft blanket. The watchman moved slower than usual, letting his lantern carve a warm pathway through the mist. He stopped near the old clock tower. The clock's hands were still, frozen at midnight for years. But that night, as he laid a hand on its cold frame, the tower seemed to sigh a long, weary sigh of something that had waited too long. And in that sigh, a memory appeared. A man standing beneath the tower, looking up every night at the same frozen time, hoping that one day the clock might move again. So he could move on, too. A promise he made to someone he loved. A promise he was never able to keep. The watchman felt the ache in that memory linger like a soft ache behind his ribs. He whispered into the fog, even though no one was there. "It's all right. I hear you." The tower fell quiet again. But now, its silence felt lighter. Night after night, the watchman continued his rounds, gathering stories like small lanterns of warmth. Each whisper, each echo, each remembered moment settled gently in him, softening him in ways he didn't fully understand. He began to realize something tender. All these things, buildings, bridges, trees, stones, held fragments of people. their joys, their hopes, their quiet heartbreaks. Nothing truly disappeared. It simply waited for someone who walked slow enough to notice. One winter night, snow began to fall, soft flakes drifting lazily down, melting on his coat. The streets were empty, untouched. As he walked toward the edge of town, he approached a wooden bench he had passed hundreds of times. Tonight, though, it felt different. He brushed the snow from its surface, and as his gloved hand touched the cold wood, a warmth bloomed through his chest. A story rose, this time clearer, fuller. He saw an elderly man sitting there, year after year, with a small thermos of tea. He came every evening to watch the lights of the town, waiting for someone who had once promised to return. And though that person never did, the man still watched. Still waited. Because hope, even the quiet kind, leaves traces. The watchman sat down on the bench, letting the silence settle around him. Snow drifted like feathers. His breath turned to mist. And then, gently, he understood. These stories weren't just memories of a town. They were reminders. Soft reminders that everything, every object, every place carries pieces of the lives it has touched. And sometimes, those pieces linger because they need to be witnessed, even if only once. He whispered into the night. I hear you. I'm here. The wind shifted, brushing past his lantern, and for a moment the snow glittered as if the night itself smiled. When he finally stood, he felt something in him settle, like a weight he didn't know he carried had loosened. He finished his round slowly, letting each corner of the town breathe its quiet stories into the cool air. By the time the first blue hint of dawn began to appear over the hills, the watchman headed back to his small room above the post office. He placed his lantern by the window, watching the soft light spread gently across the rooftops. He knew that when the town woke, people would move through the streets without noticing the whispers beneath their feet. But that was all right. He didn't expect them to understand. Night was his world. Silence was his companion. And the stories only revealed themselves to those who walked slowly and listened. Before closing his eyes to sleep, he murmured a final thought. Everything speaks. When the world grows quiet enough. And somewhere in the sleeping town, the silence answered, soft, steady, warm. Like gratitude. Like a heartbeat. Like a story continuing in the dark.